My main man. It is Minh from California. Hey, Minh, how is it going?
Hello.
Hello, Dan. Hello, Jenna.
How are you?
I'm good. How about you guys?
Doing awesome.
Good.
Doing awesome. I get to hear from my favorite Buddhist repeat caller. Woo! What is up?
Awesome.
So then today I would love to hear your opinion about a statement like many religious people say, it is true to me.
Okay.
And when I listened to Anthony conference, when he explained, the tactics to talk to believers, he seems to have problem, really big deal with this statement. And I do have opinion about that, but I would love to hear your and Jenna, what's wrong with this statement?
Okay. What's the statement? Minh, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. What's the statement that we would have a problem with exactly?
Yeah, so I guess like Anthony, he feel like, people who the most difficult to get a hold of is the people who say, well, my belief is true to me. And I think he said something like it's like relativistic view or something like that.
Yes.
And I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I would love to hear your response and Jenna's response.
Sure. Yeah, what a great question. I don't know Anthony's personal take on it. I think Anthony would say that someone saying a belief is true to them is something that's worth examining. And I think that's something I would say too. I would say it's at least worth examining. I wouldn't necessarily say that a belief can't be just true to somebody because that couldn't be the case, and I haven't discovered that yet. I will say that depending on the belief, beliefs motivate our reasoning in some sort of ways. And so when people say, as belief is true to me, there's certain circumstances that cause them to have this belief, and this belief kind of motivates their thinking in some other ways. And typically, this isn't a fact about reality. When people say, this is true to me, we're not talking about whether or not the earth is flat. We're talking about how to love somebody, or whether or not there's a God, or something that's actually personal to them, and not necessarily a fact about the universe. I think that's what most people mean when they say this belief is true to me. It's worked out for me in some sort of circumstances, right? Maybe a casual superstition, like, oh, I have this lucky rabbit's foot, and it makes me feel lucky, and I don't know whether or not it actually gives me luck, but it's true to me that it gives me luck. That's kind of an example of what I'd say that. And what people don't maybe necessarily realize is when they say that they're making a claim about reality most of the time, whether they realize it or not. Yeah. If they say that, though, this rabbit's foot is actually giving me good luck, that might be something we could measure. Maybe not, but it's something that has an effect on reality regardless. And so I think that's what Anthony would say to that. It's saying, well, if it has an effect on reality, can we explore this? Is this something that we can confirm to be true or not true? And I would probably tend to agree with that. I would say, yeah, this is definitely something that's worth at least examining because I want to know if I can just take a rabbit's foot and just carry it around with me and give me good luck. I think that'd be cool. So,
yeah.
What do you think about this idea, Jenna?
So your question is, what's the problem with the phrase "it's true to me"?
Yeah.
I think that the problem is that, that when I hear people use that phrase, they're typically talking about something that can't be, what's it, objective, subjective?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When they're talking about is there a God, to them, that is a fact, it's a fact or an opinion. It's a fact, sorry. Just like it is a fact that the earth is round. Mm-hmm. To them,
right,
that's the way it is. So when they say it's true for me, I really want to know what that means, because when I used to say things like that, that was a cop-out. So I would personally dig. I think that the problem with it is I guess that it is a cop-out.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jenna, because I think I think I realized that about myself when I said something along the similar lines of something being true to me.
Yeah.
And after later examination, I realized for myself, oh, I was just saying that because I didn't have a good reason.
Yeah.
And you kind of come to the bottom of the barrel. I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, but we could certainly look at cases where that, that might be true.
Because realistically, that person that does believe that there's a God, they believe that it's a God for that person and that person and that. They believe it's a God for everyone.
Yeah.
They just don't want to be offensive.
Right. That's true. Right.
They don't want to invalidate anybody.
When somebody says like Jesus saves people and that's true to me, they mean there was a dude named Jesus who died for people's sins and saved people. Like they think that that's true, but they're kind of hedging the language they use to be more politically correct or just to make things more comfortable for people. What do you think, Minh?
So from my perspective, because I do see myself as a religious person too, so I would give you a mini story from the Taoist sage. His
That's
name
right.
is,
You are
Sun
Taoist,
Tzu.
and you're not actually Buddhist, right? I think I actually called you a Buddhist, but you're not actually Buddhist, right?
I don't know what.
Well,
Taoist
I'm a Zen
Okay, yours,
Buddhist,
okay.
and so
What is
it's
that?
leaning
If you
towards
don't mind me
Taoism.
asking.
What's it, Jenna?
What is that? I'm sorry. I don't know what the word was.
A Taoist, you mean?
No,
Like
the one after that.
a Zen Buddhist?
Oh, Zen Buddhist.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing as a Taoist?
No, it's different. But
No, it's influenced by Taoism, but it's related closely to Taoism, but it still have its own flavor,
What's a Taoist?
I guess. Taoist is somebody who believes like there is a mystical thing that runs through the universe called the Tao, and it's permeate everything, but it's not a deity. It's simply like something, like it set the principle for life and the way of your.
it's an Eastern.
Like Donnie Darko?
Yes, actually, Donnie Darko would be a good example of that. But it's an Eastern philosophy that is kind of like Confucianism in the sense that they have beliefs about how the world works, but they're not necessarily religious in the sense that we think of Western beliefs when we're talking about gods and
Interesting.
things.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah, so the if you've ever seen the yin yang symbol, that's a Taoist symbol.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep. And that is a representation of the Tao, if I'm not mistaken. But Minh would know more about that than I would. So
Well, thanks. I learned something
Yeah,
today.
so there is this this Taoist sage. He had a meeting with his friend, and he went to a lake and he saw a fish like jump out of the on the surface of the water, and then he told his friend that, well, do you see that the fish look pretty happy when he jumped out of when he rises above the surface of the water? And then his friend said, well, you are not the fish. How do you know that he is happy? And the Taoist turns to say, well, you are not me. How do you know that I don't know the fish is happy? And if
plot
you
twist.
go
I know.
to YouTube,
Sorry.
yeah, no problem, Jenna. Yeah, and if you go to, I think it is popular stories. If you Google on YouTube, I think they should show you the story.
Yeah.
And if you go to YouTube and you type, I think like Taoist perspective. So do you see the people will give the example that we have like if I draw a number 9 on the ground, right? And I stand on the side, I see number 9. The other person stand on the opposite side of me, who see it's number 6.
Right.
So that number is that's what I consider like the objective truth. But because we have different filters, so we see differently. So I see not 9, but you see 6 because we come from a different, perspective.
yes.
Yeah.
So to me, when people say it is true to me, my understanding of what I say that because this is what I see because I have a filter based on my background, my experience, my circumstances, and therefore that's how my interpretation of what I see to be the truth. But I don't think like they really mean like it's true to me and it's not true to you. It's just say because you don't have my perspective, you don't have my filter, therefore you don't see what I see.
So can I jump in here?
Yes,
Yeah, go ahead.
I do have, because Anthony Magnabosco actually has talked about this specific example, the 6-9 kind of interpretation of
Let's see if I
events.
hit it.
Yeah, well, you go for it.
So what I get is when you're talking about somebody that's looking at a 6 versus a 9, they're actually looking at it, and their perspective is showing them that it is whatever it is, right? But when you're talking about a God and assuming that there's just an alternative perspective there, where is that 6 or that 9 that I can look at to show that it's an opposite? You know what I mean? Like if I'm saying I don't think there is a God because there's no evidence, and you're saying, well, it's true for me because I see the evidence, then I'm saying, okay, well, I'm looking at what I'm looking at, and what are you looking at?
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, and so I would, we're coming at similar places here, because when we're talking about this object that one might call a 6 and one might call a 9, we can definitely see that there are properties to this thing. And we can definitely see that, look, Jenna, if you come around this table, you'll see that the 6 is a 9 from my perspective. So I can demonstrate a method by which you can come to the same conclusions that I would. When it comes to talking about religious beliefs, however, and somebody saying, oh, well, you just have to have the same experiences that I did, you can't, it doesn't translate as well, right? I can't feel the Holy Spirit in my heart like other people can.
Right.
It was, for what I interpret from my experiences, was something I was experiencing internally that I later labeled as the Holy Spirit, because that was the cultural frame of reference that was given to me. But look, I can actually look at this experience through the lens of psychology and through the lens of science in general, and I can find that other people also experience this thing that one might call the Holy Spirit, that aren't even related to Christianity at all, that have no contact with Christian culture, but we see common ties there through biology, right? And so that's kind of my response. I think it just comes to the method of how you got to that worldview, because even the 6 and the 9 guys, they have a method where they came to it. They came to it at certain sides of the number, right?
Yes. Yes, and I want to say that the 6 and the 9 is actually something we can both see. And you know, when it comes to spiritual belief or religious belief, it's essentially like, you know, many of those concepts tend to be abstract, and you know, you don't even see it, so it's difficult to even confirm, you know, what other people believe. We cannot even compare and contrast. We cannot even see it.
It's not so abstract, right? Or it's a little more abstract.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that what their conclusions aren't correct. Like, if you say that you're in love with somebody and somebody else says they're in love, how do I know that person's experiencing the same thing I do? Well, they're probably going through something similar, and they're just kind of using that label because it gives a reference point to the experiences that we culturally understand. You see what I mean? Even though I can't actually prove, unless I like get a brain scan on you, that I knew that you were in love with somebody, that doesn't mean that we don't have any zero frame of reference whatsoever to know exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, when we're talking about, you know, emotions, you know, I can't assume that I know what emotions you're feeling right now, ever. You know, it's just interesting to me that people think that they can go that far.
It's true. We can definitely recognize similarities through empathy, right? Like through situations, and be like, oh, I had a similar situation happen and I felt this way. This is probably what this other person is feeling. And we kind of use inference.
Well, so the problem with that, and I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you to an extent, but from my experience, I'm an extremely empathetic person. And my problem that I've had sometimes in life is assuming that other people are as affected by things as I am.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
You know? And so when I think about, you know, I drop it. Like, you know what? I don't know what they're, I'm not going to assume that this person is as affected as I would be or as unaffected as I am, you know? Because everybody feels things so differently, you know, when it comes to death, when it comes to loss and change of jobs and new things. It's everybody's so different.
And some people don't even feel it all.
Yeah, it's,
right?
I just don't assume.
Yeah, that's a good policy to have, I think, in general. But Minh, as always.
Sorry, I took us off a little.
Yeah, I mean,
off topic.
Minh brings us into the weeds, and we really look at stuff, and I like it. That's why he's my favorite Taoist caller. Sorry, I said, Zen Buddhist caller. All right, Zen Buddhist caller. I was still right. But anyway, we still have these two other people that we want to get to. I know we usually make time for our great conversations, but I do want to try to wrap the show up on time tonight. Do you have any words of wisdom to give to us before we let you go?
Well, I don't really have any words of wisdom because I think wisdom is pretty much intuitive. It's not, logical. So I
see that.
cannot give it to you.
Look,
hey, that's
wisdom right there. He gave it to us. He didn't even realize it. It's amazing.